Today's fellow fasting foodie friend has been fasting for 8 years. She used a mostly OMAD schedule to lose 80 pounds, and in maintenance, she's much more flexible using a variety of schedules. She is an author, podcaster, and fellow YouTuber. Today's guest is Kayla Cox. Welcome, Kayla.
Thanks for having me, Jackie.
I'm very excited. I know that my viewers and listeners will be excited because they're very familiar with you and your channel. So really quickly, let's just, before people start to wonder, what is your YouTube channel?
6 Miles to Supper.
Awesome. And we'll get through all the, at the end where people can find you. But 6 Miles to Supper is Kayla. And I'm very excited to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
My first question I always ask, are you currently fasting or in your eating window?
I'm currently fasting. So right now we're actually in Lent. So the way our church does it is it's basically one meal a day plus 2 snacks. So today I will just be doing one meal a day. And that's generally the way I like to do it. So
okay. So is Lent easier now that you're a faster?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I didn't go to church. I was a Christian, but we did not go to church for like my whole adult life. And so, and I came to fasting and I lost 80 pounds. And then we started going to this church, and it's an Orthodox church, and they do like fasting for Lent and also during Advent and also on Sunday. So it was like, wow. I know how to do all this stuff. So
that's funny. Neat. My very first exposure to the term intermittent fasting was through church. We do like a fast at the beginning of the year, in Sikh season is what our church calls it. And so when I was nursing, I didn't want to do, I've done like the Daniel fast or lots of different varieties, but I was like, I have a giant kid I'm feeding here. And so I did intermittent fasting with a 6-hour eating window, but I gained 9 pounds. I did it a little different than I do now. So I like ate the moment I opened my window, and I didn't stop until I closed it. So my church fasting was a little different, but that was my first exposure to the term intermittent fasting. So can you talk about, you said you did OMAD as you lost weight and you use a variety of schedules. Can you kind of talk about how you decide day to day what it's going to be?
Sure. So when I first started out with intermittent fasting, I just started out as easily as I could, because fasting was like a totally foreign concept. It was like, I don't even like, the idea like, don't eat if you feel hungry, it was like foreign. So I started out with like something like an 8-hour window, just like sleeping through it. Really, it was just like, I'm not going to eat past 10 and I won't eat before 6 a.m. Like it was just, that's like, just so I could get some like time boundaries around food. And, but as I started pushing my window out further, I was like, I really like how much I can get accomplished. I like how I'm feeling. And so I just kept pushing it out further and further. And by the time like 2016 rolled around, so I started intermittent fasting, like practicing it in 2015. And then in 2016, I finally got more consistent with it. And I started going to like a 16-8 I really liked for a long time. And then 18-6, and then I eventually pushed it to OMAD. And so that's where I ended up. And so and that's what I tend to do in maintenance also.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So are there days where you still will revert back to the 16-8 or the 18-6? Is it just if the day calls for it, or you have opportunities, or how do you decide when you do the 2 meals? Or
yeah, that was something when I first started maintaining. I was like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. Like, what are the rules? Like, and then I realized like it's really whatever I want to do. Like, if I want to do OMAD, I can do OMAD. If I want to do a 16-8, I can do a 16-8. And it really depends on my life. So when I was doing this in the beginning, I had like small kids, and they were just kind of oblivious. We were homeschooling, and we were all on different schedules. So nobody noticed that I wasn't eating. So it's like not a big deal that I was like not having breakfast. But over time, as my kids have gotten older and are more aware of like of me and my schedule, sometimes they will ask like, do you want to have breakfast? And I'll have breakfast. Like I'm very much flexible as far as like, I would rather, not fast and have breakfast with my kids than, say, well, I'm fasting right now, so I'm not going to do that. As long as I can maintain my weight where I want it to be. That's,
right.
it's like a balance. So, but if I'm trying to write, I really love to do OMAD because otherwise, like, I can just so procrastinate with food and, and not do the writing that I want to do. So if I'm trying to write a book, then I'm definitely doing OMAD 6 days a week.
Is it easier to focus on the writing when you're
Oh
in the
yeah.
fasted state? I find the same thing.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I don't write,
Yeah.
but it's so much easier to accomplish things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Yeah. Like every kind of aspect of being creative, I found I do so much better if I'm in a fasted state, if I'm just not worried about eating, and I can do so much more.
I want to take a moment to tell you about my sponsor, Element. Element is a science-backed electrolyte formula. It is full of only good things, the things that you need, and it doesn't have fillers or junk that you don't need. It has 1,000 milligrams sodium, 60 milligrams magnesium, and 200 milligrams of potassium. It's going to help you stay refueled, hydrated, and feeling good all day long. It's meant for everyday people like me. I'm a stay-at-home mom, intermittent faster, all the way up to Olympic athletes use this. I love taking this to stay hydrated, to keep me fueled, and to keep me from getting sore legs while I do longer fasts. Sore legs are something I used to battle before Element was part of my regular routine. Right now, Element is offering my listeners a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single-serve packets free with any Element order. This is a great way to try all 8 flavors or to share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinkelement.com/fastingfoodie. That's DRINKLMNT.com/fastingfoodie. Don't forget they have this grapefruit salt for the summer. It is a wonderful summer flavor. It's not available all the time, so make sure if you hop on to drinkelement.com/fastingfoodie, you check out this flavor. It is so good. Thank you, Element, for sponsoring this video.
Kind of on that topic, your title or your channel, 6 Miles to Supper, you walk 6 miles every day. Do you prefer to get as many steps as you can while fasted? Do you find a difference in the enjoyment of the walk, maybe?
That was something like when I started doing the 6 miles, and I do that 6 days a week these days. Like I used to do it 7 days a week, and then I went to just I take Sundays off from fasting, and I also take it off from my step goal. Although I will go for a walk. Like I just,
you just
like,
sit on the couch.
Right. There are days where I do that, but I do love to go for walks. I found it was so good for my mental health I didn't ever, well, in the beginning, I really thought that exercise was going to be a really important part of weight loss. So I really thought I've got to be doing something. But the longer I went with fasting, the more I realized it was really about the eating is where the weight loss came from, or the fasting, and the walking was really more to keep me in the right mindset, to keep me encouraged, to deal with stress in other ways other than eating. But I find, I like to walk first thing in the morning. I go for like about a 40-minute walk with my kids. That's a new thing that we're doing. The past few months, they wanted to go walk with me, and I love that they're active. I like to have solo walks.
Yeah,
too.
That's my preference.
But I really do enjoy walking in the morning. I don't know, as far as like, do I enjoy it more, when I'm fasted or not? I've always just found it's just good to walk. And so I don't have like a certain rule, like I've got to get my walk in before I break the fast or anything like that. I'm just like, as long as my Fitbit, what is actually not a Fitbit anymore, as long as my tracker says 14,000 steps at the end of the day, that's the box has been checked. So
that's awesome. How old are your kids? Do you mind me asking?
Oh, sure. No, my oldest is 16, and that's a boy. And then I have a girl who just turned 14, and I have a son who is 10. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I know when I was talking with you last week, I did say that I love to go by myself. But my 13-year-old did start to walk with me last year. And I actually found that to be kind of nice because it was just her and I, and she's, I'm not telling her not to jump in puddles or get off the neighbor's yard or all that kind of stuff. So it does kind of make a difference, and it's fun to have the time. And maybe when my kids are 16 and 14, and I'll take them a little more often.
Right. Yeah. It's really neat to me, the walking part. Because it's, 6 miles, it takes a couple of hours for me, like at my pace. And so, it has been a great opportunity to get to know my kids better. You know, like there's just something about when you go for a long walk, it just creates these opportunities for these discussions that it's hard to have otherwise, but because there are no distractions and you're just out walking and you're kind of bored because there's, you know, you're just walking. And so it can create some good conversations. Same with my husband. Like we love to go for like really long walks and we get a lot of good talking done.
That's awesome. I do love walking with my husband. My youngest is 6, so we're kind of at that like tipping point of being able to do that solo eventually. We're not quite there, but that's awesome. And it really does, it provides a lot of time for thinking, whether you're solo or companionship. So I think that's awesome. So when you have your eating windows, do you open them a certain way? Do you have any favorite window openers?
So when I first started fasting, I would just eat whatever I was craving. So
me too.
which I found that was really helpful to get me through the fasting window. Cause my goal was always like, I don't want to be like really, really hungry. Like I want to feel like good through the fasting window. And, but at the same time, you know, you get cravings during the fasting. It's like, oh, you see somebody eating. It's like, oh man, that looks so good. Or it smells so good. And, so that's how I would just open my window. Like whatever it was that looked good in my fasting window, I'm eating that. And then I get good at fasting. And then, and so nowadays it's like, you know, I just eat whatever. Usually it's just OMAD. And so when I eat OMAD, it's generally just literally like I sit down to the table, I eat the food, whatever it's going to be. And then when I stand up, I start fasting again. Like I don't do like, I don't generally like have like an appetizer and, you know, like kind of like, oh, you know, or a snack or something to open it up. I've done it that way. And I don't dislike doing it like that. But generally speaking, it's just, you know, it's like I'm busy up until time to eat. And then, you know, I eat and then I go back to doing other things. So.
And I love that people can see, oh man, can be different for different people. And even I just had someone comment on a video just this morning and she wasn't being evil with it or anything, I don't think. But she's like, if I ate as much as as you did in your OMAD, I would wait. But the thing is, just because I do something a certain way or you employ it a certain way, I couldn't do 16-8 and not gain weight. Because I'm a volume eater and I like to just have quantity, I'd rather restrict my time, but that doesn't mean it works for everyone. So I love hearing from different people doing things different ways because I don't want anyone to ever think one way is the only way to do intermittent fasting because that's not the case.
That's exactly right. There's so many different ways you can do it and it's all perfectly fine.
But I think one thing we can agree on is if we both enjoy our eating window, it's much easier to fast.
Yes. Yeah. I don't have any kind of restricted foods. And that was really helpful too, to know like once I get to my eating window, it's a free for all. You know, like I mean, not that I'm like, you know, scarfing food down and being ridiculous. Like I'm just, I love that I can just eat whatever I want. Like there's no like, well, I'm not fasting anymore, but now I got to have a rice cake.
Exactly. And that there is, I always tell people when I'm trying to encourage them as they're starting, like you need the carrot to dangle in front of you to incentivize you. You know, the fast is hard at first. And if you have something worth fasting for, it's much more enjoyable. And then eventually it's not as hard to even get there.
Exactly. Yeah. It is interesting to me how it is a skill. Like if you can just practice it and just know that you are going to get better at it. Like in the beginning, it is like sometimes you're like watching the clock and it's like, oh my gosh, when is the window going to open? But if you just know that eventually you're going to get there and it's going to be easy and it'll become something you don't even really think about very much. It's just like, I mean, I remember when I, you know, kind of made the leap to OMAD and it was just like one meal. And it was like, wow, that's weird to just eat once a day. But now it's like normal to me. It feels weird to eat multiple times a day. So it does, there is a flip that happens. It just takes time.
So when you find yourself that you do eat more than OMAD, do you look forward to getting back to your OMAD schedule?
Yeah, I generally do.
Me too.
You know, like I think variety is the spice of life, you know? So it's like, there are sometimes where it's like, OMAD can kind of be like, oh gosh, you know, like I'd like to have a bit of a window here. So I'll, you know, and so I'll be like, okay, you know, I'll listen to that and I'll do the window. But usually what I find is once I do the window for a couple of days, I'm like, I'm tired of this. Like, I just like, it's too much thinking about food and like, you know, because I do have to, you know, if I have more window, I can't just eat like an OMAD sized meal. Like I have to think about like, okay, what would an OMAD look like? Because I know that would, that keeps me at the weight I want to be at. So then I have to think about like splitting that, like, okay, like how much would that be? And it's just a lot of thinking. But I like the challenge of it too. It's good to learn like how to do like a longer eating window and how to do OMAD, and it's all good. It's all a good learning experience.
That's awesome. And I agree with you that the variety is what keeps it interesting. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day. And I don't want it to be. But I do find when I have the longer eating windows or I go on vacation, I very much look forward to the simplicity of OMAD. It's like, okay, well, that's easy to kind of keep up with.
Yeah. And I think that is something that you kind of have to watch out for, or at least I do. Sometimes I can kind of get in this mindset of like, well, I do OMAD, so I have to do OMAD, and it's like, you don't though. You can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to like say, well, I got to 18.6 and now I can never go back to 16.8. It's like, no, you can totally do that. Whatever fits in your life at that time, because there have been times where a little over a year ago, an extended family member was going through dementia and Parkinson's. It was like an end of life type thing. So I was staying with him, for certain days of the week. And so like, OMAD just didn't work in that particular instance, because it's like he's eating and he would like, me to eat with him, and I'm going to do that. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I've got to do OMAD because that's what I do. You can figure out the right amount to eat, and it's all good.
That's awesome. And even if it wasn't all good for that time period, that you can adjust and what works in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like in those situations, if like my weight goes up a little bit, I'm like, like right now I'm in a rough stage of life, and I know how to get it back off if it comes down to that. And that's been a neat thing about intermittent fasting, is because it's so flexible and because it seems so easy to me, it's like there's just this piece. Like it's like even if the weight goes up a little bit, it's like, but I know exactly how to get it back down, and it's not like this miserable thing. Like, oh, I got to go back on that, that thing.
In the past, how do you think you would have maybe handled that same situation if you weren't in the fasting lifestyle? Because I know it would be horrible for me.
I mean, I didn't realize when I started intermittent fasting how much emotional eating I did before this. Like when I was obese, I really, it was like a mystery to me. I was like, why am I obese? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. And it was through fasting where I realized like, oh my gosh, like so often, like when I'm stressed out, I go and eat. Like I just go and it wouldn't be like sitting down to a huge binge. Like that wasn't how I did it. I would just graze throughout the day.
Constant
and I
comfort.
didn't realize. Yeah, exactly. Like a constant comfort, just always feeling good because I'm like, noshing on stuff. And so then learning that about myself, I realized like, man, going through emotional situations, if I hadn't had fasting, like I would have gained a lot of weight, like because that was always my pattern. Like in the past, I always struggled with my weight when I was, when I was a kid and just through adulthood, and I would diet and I would get the weight off, but then I would go back to, eating whatever I want and just emotionally eating, not even realize I was doing it. And then the weight would come back. And so I certainly know without fasting, I would definitely, the weight would have just really packed on, because I can put on weight really quickly.
My middle daughter, she's 11. She's had 11 surgeries, and every single one, I gained a lot of weight. I mean, not a lot. I always gained and lost the same 30 pounds. So I would get to this threshold and then lose it. But I always knew with surgeries. But I found the same thing with fasting. I've been able to subconsciously, and I mean with effort, but fasting has allowed me to change behaviors, because you do adjust to having this window, and then you're either eating or not, and you don't have the same crutch. And maybe I drink more coffee. I don't know.
Right.
Or you do more walks, but I found different things that are eating to help deal with emotional circumstances. But yeah, when you were saying that about helping the family member, I knew, I'm like, yep, the same for me. That would have been definitely a weight gain moment had I not been a faster.
Exactly.
One interesting thing that you mentioned is that you lived in an RV for 2 years. Did that make fasting harder or easier? I'm very curious because I could see it maybe being both ways.
It actually, so it was pretty easy. Now, one thing that it certainly made it easier was, so when we got on the road, my YouTube channel, like I had just started it a few months before that. And I had actually thought about just stopping the channel because we were on the road full time. We didn't really have a plan for income at all. We were just like, we'll figure it out. Which is not a good plan, but we just thought, like we're just going to do this. So we got out on the road, and it was like, I think it was around Mother's Day, and like one of my videos just for whatever reason, I think it got suggested or something, following like a really popular video. And so I was just getting all these subscribers. And so from that point on, like my channel started to grow. So then I was able to make money from YouTube. So it was kind of like the fasting became tied to my income, which is probably not a good thing, but it actually made it easier, I think, being in the RV in general. Like even if I hadn't had the YouTube channel, because we were out in nature, I was walking. It was just and plus, cooking in an RV kitchen, it's not very fun. Yeah. And it's kind of a pain. So I can definitely see how like OMAD would have just worked really well. Even if I had like no YouTube channel or anything, I still would have probably just wanted to just eat once a day and then, deal with that mess once. So.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I could see the real joy of like only having to get stuff out and put away once in a small space.
Right. Yeah. Now, one thing that did happen though, because we were traveling, we had decided like on Thursdays we were gonna do a exploration day. So we would go, explore like the nearest town or any kind of like landmark or something like that. And so previous to that, I had always just taken Sundays off. And so, which worked because my husband would like make these homemade pancakes on Sunday mornings. And so it was like, I just need to take that day off from fasting. But then when we started doing Exploration Day, that was a day where my family, a lot of times they would like, want to go get donuts to start out with. And then, and just as you're exploring the town, you're going to have lunch and stuff. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I just decided, okay, that's going to be another day off for me. So I just decided like, instead of fasting, which I could have done, like I don't get bothered by like people eating around me. Like it's not a big deal for me. I have found it's a bigger deal for other people than it is for
I totally
me,
agree.
But I just decided, I'm going to try to figure this out too. I'm just going to go ahead and, have this day off. And if my weight starts to go up, I'll change something. But I tend to just do that. I try to say like, I'm just going to try to like eat on this day like normal. And then, if my weight starts to trend up, we'll change something. But it worked out just fine.
That's awesome. I would 100% want to be on the exploration days too. Morning donuts sound good. That's every time I visit my mom, and we live in Michigan, the best donut in the state was voted in her little town. And I love visiting. They have this old fashioned sour cream donut. And sometimes I pick it up for the drive home. But if my mom wants to go to the bakery, we go to the bakery. And I just love that those kind of fun little things can be a part of the fasting journey. Because there was no Weight Watcher point allowance or I didn't eat for however long to make up for it,
Exactly.
So what was your favorite food that you explored and found? Did you have a favorite standout in your travels?
Oh gosh. Oh man, we got a lot of good donuts just at different places. We just like to stop at these little donut shops and everything. I really liked in in Michigan, actually, the pasties.
Oh yeah. Yep. Up north.
In like in the Upper Peninsula, just some of the nicest people in the entire country live there, I think. So, that's awesome. We really like that. I love all food basically. Like I'm like in Missouri, they're like they put gravy on like everything, and I was like, I love this place.
I was just gonna say I need to go to Missouri. It sounds like that's me on Thanksgiving. It's like here's my gravy bottom. That's basically my whole place. Just for gravy.
Right. Yeah.
So one thing that we talked about is that different people can fast different ways. And can you talk about how you take your coffee during fasting? Because I know it's very different than me. And I don't have any experience to share, but I think there's merit to people doing things differently and still finding success.
hmm Yeah. So I have taken my coffee with half and half in the fasting window this entire time. So from the time I started, actually, when I first started doing intermittent fasting, I had coffee with cream and sugar because I loved
Wow.
that was just how I loved my coffee. So I would have
Mm-hmm.
like a tablespoon of sugar. I know, people will cringe at that, but it's just that's how I liked my coffee at the time.
Yeah.
But I had learned about intermittent fasting from the Lean Gains blog, which was like, I think I stumbled across it because I was like lifting weights and stuff, but he talked about intermittent fasting. I was like, well, I need to try this, way of eating. And the way he explained it was like, because people are always asking him, like, well, can I have, a bite of cucumber in the fasting window? Is it going to break my fast? And can I have cream in my coffee? And he just said, like, look, if you want to put a splash of cream in your coffee, like, don't worry about it. Just do it. And then just go about your fasting window and don't like obsess over these little things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, if he said a splash, then maybe I could get away with like putting, as much as I want here, like to make it turn the right color, because there's like a certain way that I want it to be. So that's what I did. I just always had coffee with half and half in it. And generally, like, so I told myself in 2016, I like got really clear with myself on what are my actual rules because I wanted to be consistent. And so I said coffee whenever I want it, with half and half in my fasting window, which is generally like 2 to 3 times. So 2 to 3 cups a day. Usually if I get 4 or more, I'm like kind of anxious feeling. So I usually tend to cut it off before I get to 4. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's what I did. I didn't even know that was like called like dirty fasting.
Yeah.
I just like people were actually on my YouTube channel were like asking me about dirty fasting versus clean fasting. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I had to look it
You
up.
had to go.
Okay, I guess I do dirty fasting.
And the funny thing is, so people will ask me, which is why I wanted to bring it up to you, but I started by reading about clean fasting. So right from the get-go. And the great thing is I've never done cream and sugar basically because I was a poor college kid and the coffee was free at work that was black. So I never had to deal with that, but I have tested my ketosis, I've tested blood sugar, and I've never had really much of a reaction if I did the cream. But I just, because I started and that's what I know, I just really don't have a comparison. But I do think it's important for people to see you're still successful. And if you're going to let that be the only thing that keeps you from fasting, I think fasting still has merit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm in total agreement. It's like whatever gets you through the fasting window is the way I look at it. Like whatever you have to do to get like, like gum, people get like, oh, can you have gum? Can you have mints? Like, I don't know. I always, if I need a piece of gum, I eat a piece of gum. But,
and do people ask you about brushing their teeth? That's the one that always gets me. I'm like, I don't do gums or mints or any of that just because that's how I started and it was very simple for me. If I have to, I do a Listerine breath strip and that's for the sake of other people, not me. But I'm like, I don't even care what toothpaste does. I'm not going to not brush my teeth. Like,
right.
That's non-negotiable.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's just like you're focusing on the wrong things. If you're obsessed with that, then it's like you got to think really big picture here. Like you're not eating for a big swath of the day, and that's the thing that really helps the weight to come off. For it's a successful fast. I think if you do that.
I think both of our mantras could be keep it simple.
Like, yes, absolutely.
Focus on the eating window and the fasting window, and then it's pretty simple.
Exactly.
So we definitely both had different resources that brought us to fasting. What resources, and we'll get to your resources that we can share at the end, but what resources would you recommend people check out if they're new to fasting besides our channel?
But I was going to say, besides our channels, let's see. I did like, I think it's still around too. I liked Martin Birkin's blog, which was Lean Gains. If I remember correctly, though, there might be some foul language on there, which, if you're sensitive to that, then you might want to skip it. But it was just helpful to me because I remember he would like post pictures of cheesecake and stuff and would talk about, eating cheesecake. I was like, I can follow this guy because I need cheesecake in my life.
Exactly.
And I think the other place I learned about intermittent fasting was Nerd Fitness, which I think the way they described it was, what if every day was like Thanksgiving? And so you know how like on Thanksgiving, a lot of times you like won't eat because you're saving room for the Thanksgiving meal. That's what intermittent fasting is. I was like, hey, I've done that before. Like I've like said, I'm not going to eat because, I've got this meal that I want to, indulge in. And so, and that intrigued me. So those were the two main places that I learned about intermittent fasting.
Okay. I love that. I've never heard that what if every day was Thanksgiving, because it has the joyful eating window. You're saving room for just that joyful eating window, and nothing else is going to compare to having kicked cereal in the morning isn't going to make my dinner better. So
yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I will link both of those if I can find them. Link them in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, well, if you don't mind, I'll move on to the fast food round.
Oh, sure.
My personal favorite, because you get to know about people. Okay, so Kayla, what is your absolute favorite drink?
Aside from coffee, it would be a cherry limeade slush from Sonic.
Yummy. I love cherry limeade. That is my go-to flavor there as well.
So good.
You want to hear a funny Sonic story, though? My son, who loves all sugar and all varieties, will not drink Sonic slushes, and because he says they taste like plastic. And he maintains he got it once when he was 3, and he's like, this tastes like a plastic glove is specifically what he said, which me and my daughters were like, what is he talking about? But he still to this day won't drink it. So
really?
Oh, no happy hour for you, buddy.
Right. Yeah. Your loss.
Yeah. What is your favorite food?
Oh gosh. Steak.
Steak. Yeah, I love steak.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the weirdest food combination that you love? If you have one.
Yeah, I think probably the weirdest thing that I like to eat is peanut butter ramen. So I like to take ramen noodles, and I boil the noodles, but then I drain off like most of the water, and then I'll put in the little beef seasoning packet, and then some peanut butter with it, and it's really good.
Now that kind of threw me off when you said that, but I love peanut Thai dishes, so I guess it's probably very similar. I just had never thought of it. Wow. Okay. Do your kids eat that as well, or is that just a you thing?
Yeah, no, that was funny because when I first started eating it, everyone in my house was grossed out. They're like, that is disgusting. But I have slowly brought everyone else around to my way of thinking, maybe with the exception of one kid.
Oh, that's funny. That actually, I'm going to have to probably try that because I do like beef ramen and I love peanut butter. So why not?
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yes. With ham.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
Yeah, it's one of those really weird things. Like when I first, I had heard about it, I was like, that just seems disgusting, But once you try it, it's like, wow, that is a really good combination.
And then you're eating fruit. So
exactly. Yeah. So it's healthy.
Exactly. What's a food that most people love that you dislike?
I think like Splenda, stuff sweetened with Splenda. It seems like everybody thinks it just tastes great and like you can't tell the difference, but I hate it. I hate the way it tastes and it makes my stomach feel weird. So I'm out on Splenda. Okay,
no Splenda for Kayla. And if you could pick the perfect last meal, what would it be?
Okay, yeah. So it would be a ribeye steak. Well, I would start with a salad with blue cheese dressing, lots of blue cheese dressing, and a steak with a side of risotto, and then creme brulee for dessert.
That's my favorite dessert. I'm with you on that. That sounds like an amazing meal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing the fast food, Kayla. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to share? And then we'll get into where everyone can find you.
Let's see. Well, I think the thing that probably sticks out to me the most about what I've learned about fasting, and just in general is that, all food can be enjoyed and that you really can have peace with food. Like if you just learn how to eat the appropriate amount, which fasting, I think does a great job of, because in our current culture with all the availability of food, it's really difficult. Like if you're just eating all the time to eat the appropriate amount, but having fasting, it kind of makes it easier, or you can eat the appropriate amount and eat whatever you want. So,
awesome. And where's the best place for people to find you, or places?
So my YouTube channel, 6 Miles to Supper, and the website, 6milestosupper.com. Those are the two main places. I'm not on any social media, otherwise just my YouTube channel. So
Okay, that explains why I couldn't find you.
yeah. I used to have an Instagram, and I just got to a point where I just need more peace in my life, and it had just become overwhelming. And so I decided, okay, like one thing I do is I do not look at YouTube comments, and because weight loss and fasting and all that stuff, people can have some really strong opinions, and once you've figured out what works for you, that other kind of input really isn't helpful, is what I found. And I mean, it's one thing if you're struggling and you need like some advice, that's helpful. But once you've figured out what works for you, I think it's a good idea to kind of like, protect your mind a little bit and put up some boundaries. And that's what I do with YouTube comments, and that's why I don't have like an Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I think it's great to have those boundaries. And you have a few books?
I do. Yeah. I wrote The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting. That was the main book I wrote about intermittent fasting, just how I practice it, the kind of the way I think about things, how I lost the 80 pounds. And then I also wrote another book called Overcoming Weight Loss Obstacles, which really focuses more on the hard parts, like the mindset stuff that goes along with weight loss. And I also have a young adult fiction novel that I wrote called Escape from Olszek's Castle. So,
wow, okay. And are all of those available on your website?
Yes, they're all available on Amazon and on my website.
Awesome. Very cool. I will link to everything down in the show notes. And I really appreciate you being here with me today, Kayla.
Thanks, Jackie. It was a pleasure.